So again, we're on part 2 of chapter 12, 8th edition psychology textbook by David Myers. So where I last left off, I was talking about females. Okay, so females have ovaries, and because of that, they have estrogen. And women also have a small amount of testosterone. Testosterone is going to remain pretty constant in males. Now, as they get older, there will be a little bit of a decrease. But when you look at males, if you castrate a male, it's going to reduce their testosterone and it lowers their sexual interest. Estrogen, female animals in heat express peak levels of estrogen, and so females receptively may be heightened, like with estrogen injections. So sex hormones may have milder effects on humans than on animals. Women are more likely to have sex when close to ovulation. That's when they have an increase in their testosterone, so a little bit more aggressive. And men show increased testosterone levels when socializing with women. So here's the physiology of sex again, the psychological part. So biological, psychological, social, cultural. External stimuli is common knowledge that men become sexually aroused when browsing through erotic material. Women also, though, will become aroused as well. So imagine stimuli. Our imagination is our brain's greatest influence, and it actually is your brain's greatest sexual organ. So people with spinal cord injuries and no genital stimulation, they can actually still feel sexual desire. And so dreams are just another form for our brain to do imagination, and people do have sexual dreams, and this stuff is going to arouse a male and female. Adolescent sexuality: when individuals reach adolescence, their sexual behavior, of course, develops because the testosterone and estrogen is pumping through their body. There are cultural differences. Sexual promiscuity in modern Western cultures, like in America, is much greater than Arab nations or other Asian countries. So when we look at contraception, contraception is meant to prevent pregnancies and prevent disease. So a lot of ignorance goes on. A lot of people do not understand how to use birth control. Guilt related to sexual activity. So some people don't want to talk about the use of contraceptives or figure out how to use them properly because they feel guilty. There's minimum communication, so teenagers don't feel comfortable talking to their mom or dad about contraceptives. Alcohol use. Remember, alcohol is a depressant, and because it's a depressant, your judgment is going to be a little bit decreased, so that you tend to see people who might not judge something properly. Mass media, so the media's portrayal of unsafe extramarital sex is going to also decrease the use of contraceptives. When we look at STDs, or sexually transmitted infections, when we look at what reduces it, teens who have a higher intelligence, they tend to wait longer, they delay sex. Kids who are religiously associated with a church or they have a religious commitment, they tend to wait for marital commitment when the dad's present, and then when you have learning programs also. When we look at sexual orientation, someone is homosexual if they are attracted to the same sex. They're heterosexual if they're attracted to the opposite sex, and bisexual people are attracted to both of the sexes. So sexual orientation, really, when you look at homosexuality in men, it's about 3 to 4%, and in women it's 1 to 2%. So they are a minority, and they do struggle with their sexual orientation. So origins of sexual orientation. Homosexuality is more likely based on biological factors like differing brain centers, genetics, and parental hormone exposure rather than environmental things. So having two parents who are homosexual and you're an adopted kid, it really isn't going to influence you at all. So animal homosexuality, there are same-sex partners in the animal world, so it does exist. The brain in homosexual men, the size of the anterior hypothalamus is smaller. And there is a difference in the brain between a homosexual male and a heterosexual male. So a number of reasons suggest that homosexuality may be due to genetic factors like family. Homosexuality does tend to run in family. Twin studies, if one of the identical twins is homosexual, it's likely that the other one's going to be homosexual as well. Fruit flies, genetic engineers can genetically manipulate females to act like males during courtship and males to act like females. When we look at hormones and sexual orientation, prenatal hormones affect sexual orientation during critical periods of fetal development. So animals, the exposure of a fetus to testosterone results in females, sheep, exhibiting homosexual behavior. So then when we look at humans, if you expose the exposure of a male or female fetus to female hormones results in an attraction to male. So if a baby female fetus is exposed to female hormones, then she's going to be attracted to males. If a male fetus is exposed to estrogen, then the male will be attracted to males. So here's just sexual orientation and the biology part. When we look at changing attitudes, as time goes on, people are more accepting of homosexual relationships. And when we look at sex and human values, really all this stuff is kind of changing, and it's kind of changing with time. So the need to belong. We are social beings, and because we are social beings, we like to be around other people. And when we look at what actually has helped us over the decades, the millennia, to survive, aiding survival, our bonds protect us. So protecting against predators, especially for our young, helping us procure food, and producing the next offspring is part of the reasons why we do have these bonds. So belongingness. You want to belong to a group. There's social acceptance in the group. You maintain your relationships. We have a really hard time ostracizing people or breaking off bad relationships, but when it does happen, it can lead to depression and demoralized behavior, and we get a fortification of health. When we look at motivation at work, Sigmund Freud said, the healthy life, so Sigmund Freud, is filled by love and work. And, Freud's kind of a contradiction to this because he only works and he kind of distances himself from his own family towards the end. But attitudes towards work, people have different attitudes towards their work. Some people, it's a job, it's necessary, that's what you do to make money. A career, you see this as an opportunity to advance to another thing. And a calling is meaning that you believe that this is socially useful. Okay. Flow and rewards. When someone's in their flow, like artists, dancers, composers, they are not really driven by these extrinsic rewards. They're not driven by money or a paycheck or a trophy or anything like that. What they're being driven by at the moment is intrinsic rewards. They want to do a good job. And this is like when you guys are working on a paper, like you struggle, you're struggling, and you pull away from the paper, and then you come back to the paper, and all of a sudden the paper just pours out the tip of your fingertips. That's flow. And nothing that goes on, around you even disturbs you. The TV could be on. Somebody could call you. You're not ever interrupting yourself because you're in the flow of your work. So work and satisfaction. In industrialized countries, work and satisfaction pretty much go hand in hand. And so when we look at personnel and organizational psychologists, they study the principles of selecting and evaluating workers. Our organizational psychologists, they study how work environments and management styles influence worker motivation, satisfaction, and productivity. Personnel psychologists, they look at organizations and they try and select and assess the best employees. When you look at strengths, what you should do is you should try and match up a person with what they're best at the workplace. And when we look at interviews and performance, people who interview people, interviewers are pretty confident that they are going to pick the right employee and that right employee is going to do well at the job. And interviewers tend to take more credit for the workers that do good than the workers that quit after a couple of days of being hired. So intention versus habits. Intentions matter, but long-lasting habits are better. Successful employees, interviewers are more likely to talk about those employees that turned out successful. Presumptions about candidates, interviewers presume wrongly sometimes what they see. This is you judge a book by a cover, and preconceptions and interviewers' prior knowledge about the candidate could affect their judgment. This is, sometimes how you get a job is by who you know. And so if your buddy was talking you up, you might get the job because of that. When we look at a structured interview, this should be something where they analyze the job, they have a script of questions they're going to ask you, and the interviewer should be trained. So personnel psychologists, this is what they do. When we look at performance, you should be evaluated at some point in your job. And so one of these things that we notice is that employee retention is going to happen, and the encouragement of better performance. People do like to be evaluated. They just want to be evaluated fairly, and they want to know what they could do better. So organizational psychologists, they are trying to look at how we can accomplish more. And so when you look at like employee engagement, an employee does really well if they know what's expected of them. They feel the need to work. They feel fulfilled at work. They have opportunities to do the best. They think that there's something there that they're significantly a part of. And they have opportunity to learn and to do good things in that job. So managing well. Every leader dreams of managing in ways that enhance people's satisfaction, engagement, and productivity in his or her organization. So people want to do their job well. Managers actually want to make people more productive and increase the job and the work satisfaction. So job relevant strengths. Effective leaders need to select the right people, determine their employees' talent, adjust their work roles to their talents, and develop their talents and strengths. Challenging goals. People do need challenging goals so that they could reach higher levels of achievement. And these are people who are achievement motivated people. So that's why they like feedback. When we look at leadership styles, there's two types. There's task and social. A task leadership, this involves setting goals, setting standards, and focusing on achieving those. Social leadership is like mediating conflicts and building teams, like high achieving teams. So tasks, you pick a task, you get it done. And social, they're more about getting the team together and mediating conflicts and trying to build a team atmosphere. That's the end of this unit, and we'll move on to the next one soon.